What did I just watch? What the hell was this episode, guys? Last week I was talking about how the villain setup for this little storyline was a bit overly cartoony in a way that was hard to take seriously, and after this episode, it's clear they knew that and really went all in on executing that premise. Hello everybody, I am Phenom Sage, and welcome back to another Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation review. Today we will be talking about episode 20, The Birth of My Little Sister, the Maid. And I have really mixed feelings on this episode, I'm not gonna lie. I enjoyed it, of course. It was a good time, lots of laughs, lots of good moments. But at the same time, it just feels so bizarre and so weird. And I guess that's not a bad thing, but well, okay, let's take it from the beginning and maybe I can explain my perspective on this. Mushoku Tensei is a very funny series. I've mentioned this nearly since the beginning of the entire show, and I've mentioned that almost every single episode review, and it's constantly kept that wit, that humor, that charm throughout all of the dialogue in the series in a way where you would think this plotline that revolves around an otaku prince who loves Rudeus's figures wouldn't feel that out of place. And maybe it won't in retrospect, but right now, I think the reason this episode feels so strange is because the comedy in Mushoku Tensei was always used as a contrast to the more serious things that were going on. Serious plotlines, serious characterization, it was always there in a way that balanced the tone. It was never the driving force of the story the way that it is here. So when you have this arc with pretty big stakes, Lilia and Aisha are being held hostage, families of these soldiers are being held captive, Rudeus is in trouble. When all of those issues get resolved because of a Roxy figure that Rudeus made over half a season ago, it's hilarious, but is this really what this plotline deserved? I don't know, man. I feel like something as big as rescuing Lilia and Aisha could have been treated with a little more seriousness, a little more realism. Don't get me wrong, there were some great, sincere moments by the end of the episode that I really loved, and we'll talk about them, of course, but I'm curious if you guys are cool with all of this, or if you too felt like it was a little bit on the jokey gag side. And it also doesn't really help that even with all of the gags, that the entire resolution of the storyline just kind of happened over Rudeus's exposition. We have no idea what's going on one minute, and then the next, Rudeus is narrating how, oh, the guards went to go talk to Rui Jared, it turns out a bunch of things were happening behind the scenes, everything's cool now, and it's a job well done. It's just not very exciting, not very well executed in my opinion, and it feels kind of rushed. However, I did really love, though, the brother to Pax, the third prince of Shirone, Zanoba, who was absolutely hilarious in this episode and is actually kind of important in terms of new lore and new information about the world. Apparently he's a blessed child who was born with super strength, so I guess that's the thing now. I guess now we know there are people in this world who just have crazy abilities that they're born with. I guess that's not really a new thing, but it's weird that people can just be born with these really abnormal abilities. What I don't understand is if this guy was so revered in this kingdom, it says that the kingdom values him greatly and handles him with care. Why was he banished by the end of the episode? He broke Pax's arm. I guess that's why? I have no idea what was going on with that, because they even say that they have equipment to restrain him when he goes out of control, so clearly that isn't anything new, and yet for some reason, this time is the time that they decide that he needs to be banished from the kingdom. That was a little weird, but what wasn't weird, and what was actually my favorite part of the episode, of course, were the final scenes with Lilia and Aisha. This is the kind of sincerity and seriousness that I really wanted from this reunion, from this storyline. It's just so nice seeing Lilia again, man, and seeing how much she still cares and respects Rudeus as a person. It's actually really complex in a way that's interesting, the way that she views him. She seems to value Rudeus more than her own daughter in a way where she specifically raised Aisha in order to serve him. And this isn't any kind of new information. Lilia has been saying that ever since she was pregnant, but it's so interesting to me to see her so committed to that ideal and to Rudius as a person. And it's nice that by the end of this episode, Rudius has earned Aisha's love and respect meaningfully and legitimately, instead of just being forced on him by Lilia, which, I'm gonna be honest, would have been pretty creepy. Now, could Rudius have earned all of that in a plotline that was better and more interesting and more deserving of that final payoff? Absolutely. That's probably my biggest issue with how this little arc was handled. Some pretty big stakes and big development was hinged on a complete farce, and yet I am happy with where everything ended up. So by the end of all this, I'm pretty okay with it, all things considering. It was also just cool as hell to see in the beginning, just like with Paul's perspective, Lilia's POV as the teleportation happened and where they ended up. Both times they've done this have legitimately given me chills with how they're executed, and in this one in particular, I loved how they actually see the beam of light in the distance and how it kept growing and growing before it enveloped them all. If only somebody was grabbing onto Zenith at that time, maybe things would be a little bit better off, but now we're kind of going into what I assume is the final arc of the season. If you took a look at the title for next week's episode, I'm not going to say anything, but if you just saw that title, you know things are going to go hard next week. I just wonder where we're going to be taking these last 3 episodes, because at this point, the only loose ends we have left are getting Eris home, finding Sylphie, and finding Zenith. And based on the ED imagery, I have to imagine that Sylphie, the mysterious figure that we saw with the royalty, will be playing a part in this final arc. We even get that little hint at the end of the episode with the charm that she was going to send him for his birthday. And then on top of all that, I think there will be a lot to do with Eris's family being executed and I assume exiled from the region. In this final arc, there's going to be a lot of really interesting, important plot events that are going to be awesome seeing how all of them play out. And of course, there's another character from the Reason Key visual who I assume is going to be important and awesome, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he involves himself in the story as well. That's been all for me though, guys. I am really looking forward to next week's episode. Get hyped. I have a feeling that these last 3 episodes are going to be absolutely immaculate. If you want to talk to me about this week's episode or just Mushoku Tensei in general, you can join my Discord server in the description below. I love you all. I hope you are having a great day, and I will see you in the next video.